Hello, dear people. My name is Volker Schmitz. I'm from Germany. I am Buteyko practitioner, and I want to discuss a very interesting topic today, and an also very complicated one for some reasons, and this is the so-called CP test. I want to explain because actually I have my own students in the Buteyko method. I also teach yoga and martial arts from China. It's called the Wushu. And then I also coach often people who are already practitioners in the Buteyko method. And in the past, there was often the problem, or at least insecurities, when it comes to the CP test. And therefore I decided, because my theoretical background, I'm also a philosopher, and I'm a phenomenologist. I come from that German school, which was invented and developed by Atmung.org, a great philosopher, and it's actually more a technique to investigate, or even a foundation for science and a technique to make investigations. And therefore, when I saw all the problems of my students, or not of all of them, but many of them, I tried to compare different sources, what they have to say about the so-called CP test. So if you're new to Buteyko method or so, buy one of the books of the authors I mentioned, or find a practitioner and learn about, or search, for example, any of the larger websites when it comes to the Buteyko method. So because otherwise this video will be way too much for you, because it goes into not total, but a lot of depth of this topic, and if you're new, that might be too much for you. But anyways, if you're a practitioner yourself or are a student and insecure about the CP, this is the video for you. So we have to make a good definition, or we have to investigate certain parameters of the CP test. And from my phenomenological school, it's very important that we have very clear and easy understandable definitions. So this was the first thing I was looking for. And I will compare here not every source out there, but I will compare 5 books here. And these is Patrick Mckeown's book, Oxygen Advantage, especially the definition of the CP in those books. Then I will compare Andrei Nowozhillov, Living Without Asthma. I will look into Dr. Rakhimov, Artour Rakhimov's big book. And I will also look into Vladimir Buteyko, who's actually the son of Buteyko, in his PDF and his article, which is there in Russian, and a translation in one document. You will find it online for free. Type in Vladimir Buteyko in PDF, and you will most probably will find it. And I also will make links to the books or this article below here on YouTube. And then I also will look into Sasha Yakovleva's book, Breathe to Heal. And of course, when I do that, there will be some critique, because there are some, at least, inaccuracies, or let's say misleading terms from the perspective of the use of the language, and also semantically, and also relating to the clear definitions. There are some problems, and there seems to be also a reason for that problem, and at the end of the video I will try to explain why this confusion, or this at least sometimes misleading use of syntax and semantics in relation to the CP was occurring in the past, and is going around in the scene for a while. So let's jump into the topic, the CP test. And one thing further, I want to say it right now. I love every of those books, and I will mention at the end of this video why these books are very good, even if there are some inaccuracies, and every of those books has its own strengths. So ideally, you want to have them all. So because I also use these books because I think these are at least one of the better books about the method, about the Buteyko method in general, except mainly for some reason I also will mention here. So don't be offended. I know I make mistakes. I make a lot of mistakes, as you see. English is not my mother tongue, and when I write, even in German, I make lots of mistakes, and you know everybody makes them. And at the end, we all want clarity. And for me, it was a big relief after finding out some of these things I will now talk about. So let's go. CP test, and I will start with the most clear, in my opinion, most clear definition. And this is from Vladimir Buteyko's PDF or article. And yeah, he writes, I have it open here. And he writes, yeah, sit down for 10 minutes, have normal breathing before, like unconscious breathing, like normal, not more breathing than you would normally do. Sit down 10 minutes, have good posture, relatively relaxed, stress-free. This you will find everywhere. So I will not mention it when I go into the other books. That is everywhere, before, good posture, and so on. And then we have this relaxed exhalation. This is also everywhere. A slight difference in the BOLT test, but it's so small I will not go into that now. And which was from Buteyko, which is actually also the CP test, but like a slight difference there. And so we breathe out and relax, and then we hold our breath. And then many authors go into how to breathe before and after. But Vladimir Buteyko does not go very deep or does not discuss this thing very intensely, but he is talking about physical stress. So what you find with the other authors a lot is like first desire to breathe, or hold your breath to the first stress, or to the first air hunger, and everything like this, which is kind of hard to define, can be psychologically, and therefore leads to problems often in the practice. But Vladimir Buteyko is very clear and says to the first physical stress. And this is actually a movement of the diaphragm or any of the breathing muscles, like the jerking movement or a contraction, which you cannot avoid, like you just involuntary, so to speak, so to say. Yeah, and this is, then you stop the test, ideally a second or two before, because you anticipate it, and then the test is over. And he also mentioned it should be relatively stress-free, and what you should be able, in my opinion, and this you find with a lot of other authors, you should be able intentionally to have the same breathing pattern before and after. But that's already not included in Vladimir's definition, and there's a good reason, because this is also already a safety net to include this amplitude and frequency of breathing before and after the test, because mainly when you do it till this first jerking movement 1-2 seconds before, then you will be able, at least the students I had or the coaches or the trainers I coached, they all were able to do that then. So we do not even have to use that so much, but we will probably, because it gives us a little bit more security, or we will feel a little bit more safe that we did it right. So we should be able, in my opinion, but it's already outside Vladimir's definition. Yeah, and I have a look that I did not forget anything. Yeah, the basic way of diagnostic of this disease of deep respiration, which he has named a controlled pause, CP. Yeah, the process of exhalation is as natural as possible by relaxation. The doctor can recommend a patient to squeeze the nose to be sure that there's a respiratory standstill, of course. That's also the same with most authors. Yeah. Till the moment of involuntary reduction, a jerk, or the first difficulty, he puts that in brackets, of any of the specified groups of muscles, more often diaphragm is practically always observed. So this is a clear definition. You can it's almost impossible to do that wrong. That's why I started with this one, because now we go into the other definitions which have more room for problems. We start with Patrick Mckeown, the body oxygen level test, which he called BOLT, which I do not like, to be honest, so much. I like Patrick Mckeown, he's a super nice guy, he brings a lot of people into the message, so I love all these guys. But to name it BOLT test, I don't know, because we have the term CP test and it's clear what is the source of it, so I don't see the reason so much to give it another name, but he did it. Anyways, when you have this book, you will see, this is, I think it's in chapter 2 of the book, and there's a picture, a diagram, where this CP test is sketched out. There you find like this small difference because normally we would use totally autonomic breathing before the test, but he states that you should make a little bit smaller breaths before doing the test. So, okay, that will be not much difference then, maybe a second or so or something, or 2, 3. But anyways, he used that, and then you hold your breath, and then you go to the first, and he names it first signs of air hunger. And the first signs of air hunger might be psychologically. So this is like a little bit vague, in my opinion. So it's not wrong, but it's like, it's kind of, first desire to breathe, and then when I compare it to the first push of the diaphragm, might be, for me personally, it can be 20 seconds or whatever, can be in between, and this is a zone of insecurity for many people. So then he has this diaphragm, which is kind of almost wrong, or at least misleading, and then in the text, below the diaphragm, there you find, what did I do here? 1 second, yeah, there. Take a normal breath in your nose, okay, hold your nose with your fingers, times the number of seconds until you feel the first definite desire to breathe. Now it's the first definite desire, it's already a difference. Or the first stresses of your body urging you to breathe. These sensations may include the need to swallow or a constriction of the airways. May. With Vladimir, we had definite, the physical movement. With Patrick, we had first, in the sketch, he left it out in the diagram, and later he said may include the need to swallow, constriction of airways. This is like a little bit problematic. Then, yeah, release your nose, stop the timer, and breathe in through your nose. Your inhalation at the end of the breath should be calm. Resume normal breathing. So, here also resume normal breathing means you probably should be able to have the same frequency, amplitude than before. So we see we have already a few problems in this book. By the way, I forgot to mention later. I will talk to that later. Sorry. So next comes Dr. Rakhimov. So as a phenomenologist, I have also to criticize Dr. Rakhimov, who's a good friend. He lives in my flat when he's in Germany. We work together. I wrote even chapters in one of his books. I wrote a chapter in one of his books, and we work together with students and new practitioners and things like this, but still. And I was also discussing that with him, and he might change it later in his updates of his books. But in his definition, in the Bible, so to say, almost the Bible of the Buteyko books, his big book, because it has so much density, so much information, but there is a definition of the CP test, and it's also, in my opinion, a little bit misleading, at least, if not wrong. So here we go. He writes, Keep the nose pinched until you experience the first desire to, again, the first desire to breathe. That probably came from Andrei Nowozhillov, who was a teacher of Dr. Rakhimov. And maybe, I don't know exactly if whom was the teacher of Patrick, but there we have it again, first desire to breathe, which can be anything almost, like very vague. Practice shows then, in Rakhimov's book, practice shows that this first desire appears together with an involuntary push of the diaphragm or swelling movement in the throat. Your body wants you enough, in brackets. If you realize the nose and start breathing at this time, you can resume your usual or previous breathing. Means you breathe the same way, with the same pattern than before. Again, we have this kind of addition to Vladimir's, which might make sense. I think this addition is okay, but we have to clarify if the breathing before and after the resuming of the same pattern is intentionally or not. And this we won't find so far, whether with Patrick nor with Artour's or Dr. Rakhimov's definition. But it might make sense because it will still, Vladimir's definition still will work if you use it and say it's intentionally. We can keep the same pattern, but intentionally. That will work very well even with Vladimir's. Vladimir's definition and makes the thing more, maybe add another layer, so it makes it even more accurate, possibly. So this was Artour. Yeah, the test should be easy and must not cause you stress. Stress also hard to define, so the CP does not interfere with your breathing. Yeah, okay. So then let's go to another author here, another book. And we had Patrick, we had Artour, we had Vladimir. Yeah, now let's go to Novozhillov. I have Novozhillov open on my iPhone because actually I have so many books open now. My Kindle does not. I cannot open so many books on my Kindle, so I have all my Apple devices here with advertisement. And yeah, Novozhillov's is even worse, although the book's great, like all the other books, also very good. I really suggest you buy all those books if you can, but assume the correct posture. Now, Novozhillov. After exhaling normally, hold your nose with your fingers. Start your stopwatch and look at your second hand, or look at the second hand of your watch. What? Anyways, hold your breath until you feel the first need to breathe again. There we have it, the first need. The entire breath hold must be completely effortless. So duration of this breath hold is called the control pause. Completely effortless. No kind of physically clear, defined moment here. As soon as you feel the first need to breathe again, release your nose and resume breathing. The depth of the first inhalation must be as it was when you started holding your breath. The most important thing to remember, the depth of the first breath at the end of the CP should not be deeper than it was just before you started the breath hold. But, again, not defined if it's intentionally or not. And there is a difference, as we will see when we go to the next source. So Novozhillov's is, in my opinion, the weakest of those definitions. So Vladimir is, in my opinion, the most clear. Although, in terms of language, the language is hard to understand and very abstract. I think he was studying math, so might be the reason for this abstract and kind of a difficult to understand language, although it's not that difficult definition. So might be room to improvement too, but still the best of them. And then there's Rakhimov, and Rakhimov, I see Rakhimov maybe also relatively good and a little bit better than Patrick's, because there was a bold thing. He makes another change with the breathing before, and then he has a picture, and then he says something else. It's also a little bit more confused. But at the end, you probably are not too bad if you use a refined version of Rakhimov with emphasizing the physical definition, which is actually what he does when he teaches courses, and or you just use Vladimir's. You probably be also right in this PDF. And then that was a state of confusion. So you see what you get a little bit into my life, because that was a state. I was there and was thinking, okay, how to solve that? Why is that even? These people are so clever, so good books, good practitioners, good people. What was the reason for that? And then I came to Sasha Yakovleva, which was kind of interesting, and I will just read it to you. You might get the same impression I got at that very moment. And then she wrote, Sasha Yakovleva, and I think she's practitioner, at least Artour told me, since 6-7 years or so. The book is Breathe to Heal. Very good book still, although a little bit confusing here and there. She wrote, control pause. The length of time you can hold your breath so that on resumption of breathing you immediately assume the pattern of breathing you had before the breath hold. So no mentioning of jerking movement, contraction, no nothing, and also not mentioning any intention to have the same breathing pattern. So, and she called that CP pause. And then she, this is on which page, I don't know, there are no pages on the iPad, but anyway, you will find it. Just look for the control pause in her book. And then right below, positive maximum pause, she named it positive maximum. I never had heard of this term before. We all know maximum pause if you are practitioners or students, but not positive maximum pause, at least me. The maximum length of time you can hold your breath comfortably, and on resumption of breathing, force your breathing into the pattern of breathing you had before the breath hold. There we have the clear distinction. First time, but no physical stress. So this is missing here. So everybody misses somehow something, although Vladimir is in a practical way is working even without that part. So why was that? Why did she write that, Sasha Yakovleva? And probably she then talks about children, and she then applies the table of health. And the table of health was developed by Buteyko to correlate, for example, the CP to maximum pauses or to pulse rate, to stages of health, and so on. There's a video by Dr. Rakhimov explaining it. Your practitioner should have explained it to you, and you should know the table of health if you are into the Buteyko method. You will find it, for example, on normalbreathing.com. You will find it in Artour's books. You find it in many Buteyko books about Buteyko. There is a table of health, or a variation of it, but using the values. You find it also in Sasha Yakovleva's book, and there she names it. And she names what we know in the table of health. Usually, Buteyko was naming it CP. And Sasha Yakovleva named it positive maximum pause. So it was a positive maximum pause, she said, forcing your breathing into the same pattern than before. Without probably, the physical is like just missing here, but probably she means it that way. I just say it, like I don't know, but probably. So she uses another name for the CP test of Buteyko, and when we see, we can use the table of health. The table of health is very valuable if we want to investigate if our definitions are working. And that's one of the reasons I say Vladimir's is working very well, and also the thing with the resuming of the breathing after, like it was before, but intentionally, is also working very well. And if you put it together, it works very well, and will work with the table of health. For me, for example, I'm kind of a model student in terms of my pulse rate. When I have CP60, my pulse rate is around 60. My maximum pause, if I don't train it too often, is around like a little bit above, but still like, let's say 100, 110 will be my maximum pause then. in the table of health says 90, but this correlation already is not that strong between maximum pause and CP. But with many of my students, it's also working relatively fine. It is not working if I apply the so-called control pause from Sasha Yakovleva, where we have this resumption, the same breathing pattern, but without intention. And also this very first desire to breathe, or no stress at all, like no psychological stress. If I would use that, my CPs would be then lower in comparison with the maximum pause. So have a look on the table of health. It's very, I think it's very complicated if you're a beginner right now. But the practitioners will probably understand. So what happened here, and I was so confused, I was discussing that with Artour, like why is she now having a control pause which might be even only half of a normal, what I was thinking is a control pause. And what she named then positive maximum pause, and then even applying the table of health with a positive maximum pause, which for us is the CP. So to make things clearer, I from now on will refer to it to the CP light. So what she's calling control pause is, I will name CP light or children CP. And that makes total sense because there are some ailments or for children, for example, if your children 5, 6 years old does not want to take normal CP often, it's just very natural because this child might only go to the really first sign of stress, like when it starts to psychologically, air hunger starts to build. But a grown-up might hold his breath 20 seconds longer than still without physical movement. So then this children's CP, we have this children's CP, and it makes sense if you have severe kinds of emphysema or severe kind of high blood pressure and some heart problems and many others. This also practitioner-related stuff, so you should learn that, which ailments need a different strategy. For some ailments, that might be very useful to use the CP light. And there seems to be also some correlation between CP light and the normal, or I now name it modern CP, which Yakovleva called named positive maximum pause. That's for me the modern CP, or that's even what was Vladimir Buteyko wrote in his definition, or the refined version of Dr. Rakhimov. You understand? So, and why was that happen? We were discussing that, Dr. Rakhimov and me, we were discussing that, and then we thought the reason for that might be that Buteyko might even started with a CP light, because the CP light has some advantages, because it's more secure, more safe for many people. And even at the beginning, of course, he didn't want to have some misfortune or even wrong treatment of people with possible death. So he might use the CP light then. Realized that the CP light is not that accurate because we have this psychological momentum there, which might make it difficult. So you have more, it's not that accurate, as I mentioned. And then he might find out, okay, the normal CP, like going to the first physical, is very accurate. And then he might even later in the process of investigation might find out, okay, for most people it's possible to work with a modern CP or positive maximum pause. Therefore might shift it, and from now on named the positive maximum pause. It might be, I don't speak Russian, so it might be even that he was using those terms, so Sasha Yakovleva might be totally right in using these terms. So he renamed it and said, okay, as a positive maximum pause from now on, I will call it CP. And then he made the table of health with help of the complexator, the machine which was putting out all the data, like in real time, using one of the first computers. He was using it for investigation. And then he renamed it. And the CP, the former CP became more the exception for certain kinds, maybe for children or for some severe problems of the lungs and some. So he was using that only rarely, most of the times, and now the modern CP. And there we have a possible historical resolution or solution of all that confusion which is around. Because as I mentioned, many people are like insecure or even guilt, like they measure till shortly before this moment of first jerk, and then they have relatively high values, and then they feel guilty, like, oh, probably I'm measuring wrong. So this is also happening with students of mine or other practitioners. So I hope this clears things up. And now I want to go, because I criticize so much, and I want to go into the strengths of each and every of those books, because there are actually a lot. So let's start with Vladimir Buteyko. This approach is very, on the one hand, very abstract, because of his scientific background, most probably, and he models a lot. So that's very dense, this model, and is also very traditional. So there's not much, or this he tried to really concentrate only to the most important things there. So everything else, like there are of course lots of additions which are to things you could use, which might give you benefits, but he tried to exclude most of it and build a very theoretical, abstract model. And this is very cool. This is hard to understand, but it's very, very good to abstract even your thinking process and to think it through it from another perspective. And especially the definition of the CP is very good in that book, because that was a great help actually to reconstruct, or at least I tried to reconstruct how things might have happened. So very good, and it's also for free. So just take it, read it. It's just one page, it's 50 or 60 pages or so. Just go through it. It will take some time, but it's very valuable. We have the Oxygen Advantage from Patrick Mckeown. Patrick brings many people to the message, therefore I also respect and like him very much. Also, he's a very nice guy, and this book is a great motivational source. No, you will be, 1 second, my computer just, you will be very motivated by reading this book, especially if you're a beginner. So this is a good book for beginners, but still you want to find a practitioner then, or go into other books and sources to get even more density of information, and some informations which are just excluded in Patrick's book. But it's really, as I mentioned, really good motivational. Then we have Nowozhillov. He wrote the book about asthma. So this is also the strength of this book, and there's also some exercise for children, especially asthma and some things for children, very strong in this book. And he emphasizes relaxation a lot. It's also a strength of this book. So if you have people with asthma or asthma yourself, you will learn a lot, because he modeled it. He made a model there how to treat asthma, and if you correct the possible issues with the CP measurement and some other inaccuracies, then you have a great book. So Nowozhillov definitely a suggestion, as well as the other ones. Then we have Rakhimov. And to say about Rakhimov, everybody knows him. He has this large website, normalbreathing.com, and we have here the German fraction, Atmung.org. You can find lots of information for free then. And this book is like 300 something pages, dense, full of information. Mostly everybody I know, and even most practitioners, really like this book, because you will find tons of information there. Might be that I think it has not many weaknesses personally, but the CP might be one of those possible weaknesses, and there are probably, because of the density of information, some more. But still, here you will find things you will find nowhere else. And it's kind of scientific. He has a lot of investigations, links there, a lot of sources from PubMed or in many other sources where he got this information. And yeah, you might check it out. It will take a long time to read, and it's also a little bit hard to read if you're below CP30, and especially if you're not a practitioner yourself. So ideally you're a practitioner and above CP30, then this book is just gold. Yeah, this is, so we have, and then we have Yakovleva's book, which is like, has very good information, as I mentioned already. The exercise for children are extremely good, and also like this hint to the differences between the CP test, which I was talking about a long time, and therefore this book is definitely worth buying. You know, the problem might be here and then a little bit confusion, and also it's talking about a lot of about asthma. So if it's about children and asthma and some general new perspectives of some points, this is also a very good book. So definitely, as I mentioned, buy all this book if you can. If you're a practitioner, you should, I think. And yeah, I hope you understand what I was talking about in this video. You might want to watch it again, because I was thinking like really long time about that. And of course, I know myself, I might be wrong. So that's just, that can happen. And I don't want to treat anybody like, as I mentioned, I like you all, and don't feel disrespected or so. I think your work is great, and we all want to have clear definitions, so see it as that. And Buteyko method, kind of fresh, kind of new, still developing, so let's try our best to keep it clean and not avoid the watering down. That's so to say the intention that I like to see so many people working about it now, and then let's try to keep it concentrated and to keep it real dense with not much watering down. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. Like my channel, go to Atmung.org in Germany, or normalbreathing.com, or buteykomastery.com. And if you want to be coached by me, just write me a mail. I will make a link to the websites I mentioned, to the books I mentioned, and also to my mail address if you want to be coached. Even if you're a practitioner yourself, just let me know. Yeah.